Like she's third or fourth in betting odds on being MVP at the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
Revenge doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it moves in silence. One decision, one quiet refusal, and an entire power structure starts to crumble. For Caitlin Clark, revenge wasn't about social media jabs or spicy interview quotes. It was precise, calculated, and devastatingly simple. She said no. No to Geno Auriemma. No to UConn's legendary dynasty. No to the seven-figure offer that showed up years later, desperate and overdue. It sounds unbelievable at first. Who walks away from more than $1 million for just 8 weeks of basketball? But this wasn't just a contract. It was a lifeline for a coach who once dismissed her, minimized her talent, and made her feel like she didn't belong. When Clark turned it down, she didn't just reject a paycheck. She shattered the pride of a man who never thought he'd be humbled. That's why this story goes far beyond basketball. It's not about stats, highlights, or trophies. It's about power. For decades, Geno Auriemma stood as the gatekeeper of women's basketball. He decided who mattered, who shined, and who faded into the background. But Caitlin Clark rewrote the rules. She didn't need his approval, his program, or his money. She built her own legacy on her own terms. And when he finally came back asking, she delivered the coldest message possible. I don't need you. You need me. That wasn't just rejection. That was revenge, crowned. Geno's greatest mistake wasn't a bad substitution or a missed timeout. It was arrogance. Blinding arrogance. This all happened before Caitlin Clark became the face of basketball, before sold-out arenas and record-breaking TV ratings. Back then, she was just a kid chasing a dream. And she was honest about it. To her, UConn was everything. The dynasty, the empire, the birthplace of legends like Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, and Breanna Stewart.
Like I said earlier, they actually had odds that, she was like third or fourth in the betting odds to be MVP at the WNBA. That's such a slap in the face to every WNBA player. It's unbelievable.
For a girl growing up in Iowa, nothing felt bigger than the dream in front of her. When recruiting season arrived, the storyline seemed inevitable, the most electric talent of her generation joining forces with the greatest recruiter the sport had ever known. But that moment never came. Geno Auriemma never called. He didn't reach out to Caitlin Clark. He didn't contact her parents. He barely sent a half-hearted message through her AAU coach. The silence wasn't accidental. It was intentional. And the message was unmistakable. Clark wasn't a priority. The explanation sounded reasonable on the surface. UConn had already landed Paige Buchers, and Auriemma claimed he didn't want two-point guards. Fair enough. But then came the remark that crossed the line. Geno suggested that if Clark truly wanted UConn, she should have called him. Let that sink in. The coach celebrated for identifying once-in-a-generation talent before anyone else decided Caitlin Clark wasn't worth the effort, and then placed the blame on a teenager for not chasing him down. That wasn't just a recruiting oversight. It was disrespect. The kind that stays with you forever. Clark didn't respond publicly.
She didn't complain.
She didn't fire back. She stored it away, quiet, patient, and focused. If Geno didn't believe in her, she would find a place that did. So she chose Iowa. No championship banners. No dynasty prestige. No aura of inevitability. To outsiders, it looked like settling. A backup plan. But for Caitlin Clark, it was freedom. At Iowa, she wasn't standing in Paige Buchers' shadow. She wasn't an afterthought in Geno's system. She was the centerpiece, the player the entire program would revolve around. And the moment she stepped onto the court in Iowa City, everything changed. The script flipped.
That's the worst part about new fans. They have no perspective. There's no context. So they just say ridiculous nonsense.
Her logo-range threes weren't just made shots. They were declarations. Her sold-out arenas weren't just fans and seats. They were undeniable proof. Her record-breaking television ratings weren't coincidence. They were evidence, stamped and undeniable. Every highlight, every shattered milestone, every viral moment delivered the same message. You overlooked this. Meanwhile, Geno Auriemma leaned further into arrogance instead of accountability. Rather than admitting he misread her talent, he offered dismissive, condescending remarks, talking about her like she was just another kid messing around on a driveway. He tried to reduce something extraordinary into something average. But average doesn't fill Madison Square Garden. Average doesn't push women's basketball into mainstream conversation. Average doesn't generate millions in revenue or redefine relevance. And that's where the irony cuts the deepest.
Delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on
Geno Auriemma shut the door on her, convinced she'd blend in as just another solid player. Instead, Caitlin Clark built the most powerful individual brand women's basketball has ever seen without him. So when he eventually came back, contract in hand, Clark didn't explode.
She didn't boast.
She simply met the moment with a single word: no. That one word landed harder than any championship loss Geno has ever endured. Still, he couldn't move on. Whenever Clark's name surfaced, he pulled her back into comparisons with Paige Bueckers, desperate to remind everyone who he had chosen. But while Geno clung to the past, Clark was busy shaping the future. Paige became his shield. Each time Clark connected with fans or dominated headlines, Geno made sure Paige's name was mentioned alongside hers. That wasn't accidental, it was calculated. By linking Clark's success to players from his program, Geno kept himself relevant, as if her rise only existed because of the dynasty he created. But backhanded praise has an expiration date, and people started to see through it. Fans noticed, analysts noticed, coaches noticed. The illusion didn't hold.
To do everything they could to make the most of the situation. They tried to make the most of Caitlin Clark not playing by hinting everything and basically making people think that
Caitlin Clark's brilliance didn't need disclaimers. She was drawing crowds larger than entire professional franchises. She was breaking records the sport had never even approached. She wasn't just playing the game. She was changing how people talked about women's basketball altogether. And there stood Geno Auriemma, smiling for cameras, posing as the wise old gatekeeper, while underneath he clutched his throne like it was slipping from his grasp. Behind the charm was insecurity, the kind that sets in when the spotlight starts drifting away and you realize you can't pull it back. Eventually, the mask cracked. Subtle jabs weren't enough anymore. What began as sly shade turned into open hostility toward anyone who dared support Clark. For months, his commentary carried an edge, sharp, dismissive, and increasingly bitter. Then came June 2024, the Dan Patrick Show. The moment Geno crossed a line he couldn't step back from. The Hall of Fame coach, the man meant to represent the highest standard of women's basketball, didn't just question Caitlin Clark. He went after her fans. There was nothing clever about it, nothing nuanced. He called Clark's supporters delusional, claimed they didn't understand the game, and then went even further, arguing that they were actually harming women's basketball itself. Their supposed offense? Believing Caitlin Clark could finish top 4 in WNBA MVP voting as a rookie. To Geno, that belief wasn't enthusiasm. It was a threat, a challenge to the empire he had built. In his eyes, it wasn't passion. It was ignorance, loud and unacceptable. Diana Taurasi summed up the sentiment with a now-famous line, "This kid's in for a rude awakening." But here's what was really happening in that moment. Millions of new eyes were flooding into women's basketball, and they were there because of Caitlin Clark. Families were buying jerseys. Kids were lining up for hours just to catch a glimpse of her. Casual viewers, people who had never watched a single WNBA game, were suddenly glued to their screens. This was the biggest surge of momentum the league had ever experienced. And Geno Auriemma's response wasn't gratitude. It wasn't celebration. It was dismissal. Instead of embracing the wave, he mocked it. This wasn't thoughtful analysis. It wasn't a coach breaking down strengths or weaknesses. It was personal, a direct shot at the foundation of Caitlin Clark's rise, the fans who carried women's basketball into the mainstream. Geno wasn't just brushing off Clark. He was brushing off the people who made her impact impossible to ignore. And because of who he was, people paid attention. His words carried weight, which is exactly why they were so damaging and so revealing. By calling her supporters clueless, he wasn't just underestimating them. He was underestimating her. He was saying the hype was fake, that the moment wouldn't last, that eventually he'd be proven right. But here's where the story turns. Geno wasn't right. Not even close. Caitlin Clark didn't fire back on social media. She didn't take shots in interviews. She didn't need to. Her response came in the only place that mattered, on the court. What followed wasn't just vindication. It was a complete collapse of Geno's credibility. Clark went on to win WNBA Rookie of the Year. She earned all WNBA first team honors. And when the MVP voting was finalized, she finished fourth, exactly where her so-called delusional fans said she would. The prediction Geno laughed at became reality. And in that moment, his authority unraveled in full view of the public. This wasn't just a win for Caitlin Clark. It was validation for everyone who believed in her. So here's the question. Did Geno Auriemma deserve it? Or did Caitlin Clark take it too far with that icy rejection? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Click the video on screen, and we'll see you there.